is that we cannot walk away from our commitment.
Tap into if Congress does not pass more aid for Ukraine. What is that funding source?
I'm not going to go beyond what the president said. You're going to hear directly from him, as he said. He's going to give a major remarks on Ukraine. I'm just not going to get beyond that. Okay.
Secretary, our colleagues at CNN are reporting that the U.S. is sending.
You are listening to the White House press briefing there as we have Karine Jean-Pierre speaking to members of the media. She spoke about student debt and the economy and also answering questions about House Speaker Kevin McCarthy being ousted and who Democrats might want to be the next House Speaker. We know that a vote is set for next week. We're going to have a lot of coverage right here on Live Now from Fox. I do want to get to some of the other stories that we are covering at this hour here. Take a look at this video. We showed you this a bit earlier, live or on Unfiltered, as the man charged with the murder of Tupac Shakur appeared in court very briefly today. Dwayne Davis, known as Keefe D, was expected to be arraigned, but he asked for more time to get legal counsel, so that arraignment has been postponed until October 19th. Police and prosecutors say Davis masterminded the shooting death of Tupac in Vegas back in 1990.
With cautious optimism, and I'm echoing the remarks from the stepbrother of Tupac Shakur on behalf of their family. I think he speaks for their family and plenty of fans out there about the cautious optimism that this moment represents in what's been a cold case. I hope that justice prevails.
Why do you think it is that all of these decades later, people are still thinking about this case and paying attention to it? Because I know that, this question comes up time and time again. And then when we learned just a few months ago that a home was being searched in connection with the case, everyone started listening a little bit closer and thinking, is this finally a crack in the cold case? Why is it that so many people are still paying such close attention?
I think so many people are paying such close attention to this case because we see just an overwhelming amount of gun violence in our communities. It wasn't long ago that we were reporting on, the murder of Takeoff, from the group Migos. There have been really cases that have shaken the world. Not just the world of hip hop, but have shaken, the world. You think about the tragic loss of Biggie Smalls. Think about the tragic loss of so many at the hands of gun violence and gang violence. And so at a time where that problem has not let up, we still continue to see far too many folks, particularly Black and brown folks, dying at the hands of gun violence. And so I think that is one piece of why people are paying such close attention to this. But Tupac was an icon. a lot of folks wonder, wow, what would the world of hip hop be? What would the world of music be? Had Tupac Shakur, lived longer. And so, I think when we lose people far too soon, we don't necessarily get the closure that we need as family and as fans. And so I think more importantly, that's what people are looking for. And, this is the greatest opportunity for closure that so many of us have seen in nearly 30 years.
And this is kind of a difficult question to answer because it is fairly broad, but what would you say has been the social impact of this case overall? Again, we're talking decades and decades ago. What has the social impact been?
I mean, I think the social impact of this case
at large to a degree, because remember, it's only 8 people. It's only 8 of these so-called Republican reps who made this move. The vast majority of the GOP conference supported Kevin McCarthy in the speakership here.
we also want folks who may not have been involved to have their name cleared.
I don't know if you can speak to this, but again, we're talking about the 90s when social media didn't exist. You didn't have Facebook, Twitter, any of that. So now in this age, what sort of impact do you think social media would have on a case if this were to be playing out now? Because, for instance, you did mention, Takeoff, for instance. That is a story that we talked about a lot here on Live Now from Fox, and it was, making the rounds on social media as the news was breaking. So how would this be different if social media were as prevalent now as it was, or as prevalent then as it is now?
It's hard to say what difference it would make. On one hand, we've seen examples of, folks taking the social media with insights, that law enforcement's able to use to help more quickly identify, who needs to be brought to justice. We've also seen social media muddy the waters, where it's not clear, what information is trustworthy and what information is not. But I can say that there's a lot of love and a lot of enthusiasm for Tupac Shakur, yet and still I think there are a lot of fans out there that want and need the closure related to his untimely death and murder. And this is the best shot that we've had in nearly 30 years to get that.
And one thing that's interesting to note is that arraignment was supposed to be today. That is the initial court appearance. But, folks have been waiting decades and decades for some answers. And now they have to wait even longer because the arraignment has been postponed by several weeks. So it almost just elongates the amount of time that folks have to wait.
Well, we've waited this long. And so a couple more weeks is just par for the course. But more importantly, we've been in this for the long haul. We want justice. We want accountability. And this is the closest that we have gotten to that in nearly 30 years. And so, our hearts are with the family of Tupac and with the fans of Tupac that
A lot of questions about a variety of topics, including the economy, student loan debt relief, and of course, the House speakership. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. We are taking a live look inside the U.S. Capitol. It looks like folks are waiting for a news conference to get underway, and that podium is set up and ready to go. Everyone kind of gathered around that podium over the last several minutes, so I'm not sure if we are expecting to actually hear from somebody or if they're hopeful to speak to someone there. Not sure if it'll be about the House speakership. A lot of possibilities, but if we do see somebody walk up, we'll make sure to take that live for you right here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, let's head over to the White House. Oh, there's Mitch McConnell, so let's pop up that audio.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking Speaker McCarthy for his service. We had a great personal relationship, trying to lead two very different parts of the American government. I think he has much to be proud of. We avoided a government shutdown. We did the inevitable with regard to the debt ceiling. And I'm one person who's extremely grateful for his service. I have no advice to give to House Republicans except one. I hope whoever the next speaker is gets rid of the motion to vacate. I think it makes the speaker's job impossible, and the American people expect us to have a functioning government. On the Senate side, we need to get as many appropriation bills passed as possible. The majority leader's indicated that's what he would like to do as well, and he'll have plenty of cooperation from us in trying to achieve as close to a regular appropriations process as we possibly can.
And at least here in the Senate, we have Senator Collins and her great work on the Senate Appropriations Committee for getting us at least in a position where we can consider appropriations bills, and that should be the #1 priority for this Congress up until the next deadline that we hit, and hopefully the one beyond that. Because honestly, if we don't get the appropriations process going here, we're just not going to get any of these bills done before the end of the year, and we're going to end up in a terrible position at the end of the year. So I hope Senator Schumer will make this the #1 priority. He's got a lot of other things he wants to do. We shouldn't be doing anything else right now but dealing with appropriations bills as they have been reported out of the Senate Appropriations Committee. We have until November the 17th. I regret the fact that we're not going to be here next week. I think the Senate ought to be in here next week working on the appropriations bills because we have a short amount of time and a lot of work to get done. And I know everybody on our side is committed to making this process work and to seeing that we actually can make major significant headway and progress on the annual appropriations process before the next November 17th deadline. And let me just say make one observation about that too, because I think it's really important as we think about funding the government that we take a look at what's happening at our southern border. It is an absolute disaster down there. 260,000 people apprehended trying to come into the country illegally in the month of September. A new record, all-time record. Or as Senator Barrasso likes to put it, 11,000 people per day. 11,000 people per day. And this administration so far has had a blind eye and a deaf ear to the horrible circumstances that are at our southern border. There is nothing humanitarian about what's happening down there. We need to address that, and I think if the Democrats are willing to work with us, we can do that in this appropriations process as well.
Well, Joe Biden's border policy has been one train wreck after another. And the reason I say train wreck is that the number of Americans who have died from fentanyl since Joe Biden has been president equals the number of people, if you take an Amtrak train, fill it with people, crash a train, everyone dies every other day. That's the number of people in America being killed by fentanyl. And I also use the train analogy because Joe Biden should be familiar with the number on that train because he took the train back and forth to Delaware when he was a senator for 36 years. But last week, he went to Arizona. So Joe Biden goes to Arizona, which is a border state, where the number of illegal immigrants and lethal drugs that come across every day continue to kill Americans. He didn't go to stem the flow of lethal drugs. No. He went to increase the flow of campaign dollars into his campaign accounts. But he didn't go to the border. He was so close to the border, he was closer than his regular daily train ride home to Delaware. But he didn't go. He has so little respect for the Border Patrol or the citizens of this country or the communities in which they live by the border, ignored him completely. It is disgusting. Republicans have solutions. It's the Secure the Border Act. 30 of us have co-sponsored it. It secures the border from illegal immigrants and deadly drugs. Now, you know, when a train crashes, they often say that the engineer was asleep at the switch. Well, sleepy Joe Biden, he's been asleep at the switch, and people all across America are dying by the trainloads.
All right, everybody, it is 2:18 over on the East Coast, 11:18 on the West Coast. Sounds like there's an emergency alert going off, so we're dipping down the audio for now. We're going to keep that, let's say, just down audio-wise here. Let's actually go to a quick 2-minute commercial break here at 2:18 on the East Coast and 11:18 on the West Coast. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. Again, you do have GOP senators who are speaking on a variety of topics, including the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy being ousted, but also the border and other policies. Let's pop up that audio and listen in live, raw, and unfiltered.
Cause and effect. The good news is this is a solvable problem. We could come together with Republicans and Democrats to reinstate those policies, the president reinstate those policies, and to finish building the wall. Sadly, all of our communities now in this country are paying some price, some paying a big price for that, whether you're a northern border state like Montana or a southern border state or in between. It's insanity. Veterans in New York were forced out of a nursing home to make space for illegal immigrants. Service members' hotel reservations were canceled because of migrants. They were canceled for the Army-Navy game because of migrants that had taken up space there. Even the Democrat governors are fed up. Let's hope they start calling the White House and tell them they're fed up with these policies that are causing this disaster. It is time for President Biden to wake up. Maybe he should engage his border czar, Vice President Harris, and get something done and end the nightmare on our southern border.
I would just add one thing on the border. Earlier this year, it was only Fox News that was covering this disaster at the border. Now it's being covered on CNN. So that tells you that even they couldn't ignore this catastrophe that's been going on almost since the beginning of the Biden administration.
What's your concern about trying to fund the government in 5.5 weeks if they struggle next door to have a speaker? I mean, these two things go hand in hand. They can't function without a speaker, and the imperative to get the government funded and avoid a problem that.
Well, I think the obvious answer is we need to get a speaker, and hopefully we'll get one by next week. And I'll repeat what I said earlier, which is I think to do that job for anyone, you have to get rid of the motion to vacate, because it puts whoever the speaker is in a hammerlock of dysfunction, so potential dysfunction. So I hope whoever emerges insists on getting rid of the motion to vacate.
Alex? What is your strategy going forward to get funding for Ukraine?
Well, I think it's important, and I think Kevin McCarthy addressed that very well last night, and it's still a major priority. I think a majority of the members of both bodies still support it. We need some direction from the administration as to how they intend to go forward.
Leader McConnell.
Burgess.
Jim Jordan, a congressman running for speaker, says he does not support more Ukraine aid. Does that bother you? I mean, do you have a preference for a speaker?
Look, I think job one right now in the Senate is to get back on the appropriation bills, get as many finished as the majority leader will let us. And all of these other issues are not going away. They'll be dealt with in due time.
Thank you.
All right, that's the end of that news conference. Fairly brief overall, but one takeaway, of course, they were talking about border policy and things of that nature, but you did hear McConnell call for the elimination of the motion to vacate, which is how Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, was ousted from that position just yesterday. We did have Representative Matt Gaetz, who filed that motion to vacate on Monday. The vote was held yesterday, and again, Kevin McCarthy was ousted from that position. Now, I do want to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break here, and on the other side, we're going to speak with one of the Republicans who voted for Kevin McCarthy to be ousted. That's coming up in just 2 short minutes. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and you are taking a live look at the Capitol there in D.C. Kevin McCarthy ousted as Speaker of the House, a huge story, and now the question becomes who will be the next leader. Representative Matt Gaetz introduced a motion to vacate to oust McCarthy on Monday, and by Tuesday afternoon the House moved forward with that vote, and we did have McCarthy actually ousted from the House Speaker role. Representative Bob Good from Virginia was one of 8 Republicans to vote to oust McCarthy. He joins us now to talk more about all of this. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Of course. So first off, the big question here, I want to get your take. What led you to actually vote to oust McCarthy? Why did you feel that that is what you wanted to do?
Well, cutting right to the chase, the final straw was Saturday's continuing resolution, which is a representation of the failures of the past being revisited, the failures of this year, that we would pass an unconditional continuing resolution for 45 days because we had not done our job and passed our 12 spending bills as Speaker McCarthy promised we would. And then it would be an unconditional continuing resolution that would keep in place all the Biden, Pelosi, Schumer policies that are destroying the country and under which the American people are suffering, not to mention the spending levels that are bankrupting our country, bankrupting our kids and our grandkids' financial futures. And we would do that with 209 Democrat votes in the House, only 1 opposing, and 51-0 Democrats supporting it in the Senate. That is what we've done in the past under Republican leadership when we've had House majorities. It's what we did with the Failed Responsibility Act, the unconditional debt ceiling agreement, where we unconditionally raised the debt ceiling to as much as we can spend between now and January 25, overwhelmingly supported by Democrats. That was another loser and a failure of Republican leadership. We cannot afford the status quo. That's how we got to $33 trillion national debt and over $2 trillion deficit this year. We need transformational change in Congress. That wasn't going to happen with Kevin McCarthy as Speaker.
When the vote began, did you think that the votes were there to actually remove McCarthy from his leadership? Was it kind of a gamble at that point? Did you think this is what was going to happen?
I had thought we were somewhere in the range of 10 members. We had 11, as you know, vote to allow it to proceed, voted against tabling the motion. Ultimately, we had 8 who voted to vacate. And I thought that was the range that it would be. There was a couple others I thought might be there. But I will tell you that very few members of Congress actually privately will defend, at least on the Republican side, will defend Kevin McCarthy privately. They've recognized that he's been a feckless, ineffective leader who's dillied and dallied and fretted and frittered away time and didn't lead us to passing our spending bills, didn't keep his commitments, would tell one group one thing, tell another group another thing. So privately, very few defended him. Privately, many knew that he was not the person to lead us in fighting with every tool at our disposal against the Biden, Pelosi, Schumer agenda that was in place. But of course, members of Congress are risk averse, and self-preservation and selfish ambition probably prevails. And so you have a reluctance to take risks and to go against the status quo. But we have a new day, a new opportunity to choose a speaker that reflects the conservative center of the conference, the conservative center of the Republican base who gave us a majority, and will be a true fighter and a true leader in the tough negotiations we have to have with the Senate and the White House.
And during a news conference last night, McCarthy did say that he does not have plans to run for the speaker position again. Is that surprising? Is that what you'd expect?
Well, I and many others had hoped that he would essentially take the high road and not put the conference through that. It was clear that there were far more than 8 that would oppose him if he were to try to run again. Everyone was basically ready. I shouldn't say everyone, but many members were ready to turn the page and move forward on someone who could get to 218. And this will be a win for the American people, in addition to Republicans across the country, because instead of having a coronation of sort of the next in line, the presumptive speaker, the one who no one can challenge, we will have a true contest. There's half a dozen or so members who've expressed their interest. We have a talented conference of qualified, experienced individuals. And so what we'll do is we'll vet those candidates. We'll debate those candidates. They'll present their sort of platforms of what they will do as Speaker, and we'll have that contest beginning Tuesday night with a House candidate forum, a Republican House candidate forum, and hopefully in short order, Wednesday, Thursday, or soon thereafter, we will emerge united from the Republican conference and vote someone in with 221 votes on the House floor.
And that leads into my next question here. Who do you feel would be best to replace McCarthy as Speaker, and specifically what qualities are you and the Republican Party overall looking for?
Well, I'll dodge the first part because I think it would be premature before I've sat down with colleagues and really tried to and I know these individuals personally, of course, but to really vet them, what their plans would be, how they would be different, what their commitments are, and to try to assess them together, because not one of us can choose a speaker. You know, a handful of us can block someone, but we want to come together and find, again, that consensus for not just 218, hopefully 221. But what I'm looking for, number one, is a leader. And there's
And you already kind of touched on this, but we know that we saw quite a few votes happen as McCarthy was trying to get that leadership position initially. Do you expect that this next vote is going to take as many rounds and as much time to get a new speaker chosen?
I don't think so. I think what we I'm angry that we didn't keep our commitments. I'm angry that we didn't pass our spending bills. I'm angry that we didn't keep our commitment to going back to pre-COVID spending for non-defense discretionary. I'm angry that we haven't used the debt ceiling or the appropriations process to try to secure the border to leverage that. I'm angry that we haven't went after the weaponization of the government against its citizens, that we haven't used every tool at its disposal. And I'm angry about that. I'm not angry that somebody doesn't get to be speaker. We need to be angry about more than just not being speaker. And so